about this research that you let me know earlier this year, and I was able to use in my workshops. And we're talking about how we actually found a way of measuring how being in nature, particularly national parks, increases not only your well-being, it also increases attention span, your cognitive ability, and productivity. So workplaces can actually benefit from being involved in some of these wonderful programs. So I'd like to talk to you more about that and share what wonderful findings you have. So what's your role at the university there, please, Ali?
So I'm a senior lecturer in the School of Environment and Science. Uh, and I'm also a member of the Center for Planetary Health and Food Security and the Center for Mental Health, which allows me to do research at the juncture between health and science. So around nature and mental well-being.
And what a wonderful area to be studying, because it has been studied in drips and drabs. But what I particularly liked about the research articles that you've been writing is that you've done the literature review, made it into very, very recent times. So if you're looking at COVID, where our mental health has increased by 13%,
Yeah.
as a mental health, as in mental health unwellness has
Yeah,
increased by
yeah, the
13%.
crisis is getting worse.
Yes.
Absolutely. It was
So
bad.
what's
It was bad before COVID. There's plenty of reasons why, and different part of the population suffer from different things. So already we know that 1 in 5 Australians are suffering from some kind of mental illness at any time, and 1 in 2 of us will at some point in our lives. And that's not even COVID. That is pre-COVID figures, for many reasons, pressures and things. And so we are in a mental health crisis, and anything that can help people recover from this, being able to, in my opinion, continue with their life, which is what we care about. We care about our ability to go to work, feed our children, our day-to-day life, and that is very much linked to your mental well-being, your mental health. And so when you think of nature, which is a free community resource, and that's right there for most people, it is such an opportunity to use that for this mental health
So
well-being.
the studies that you were doing were looking mainly at forests and national parks, so
Mm-hmm.
getting in with trees and forests. And for me, I know how uplifting that is. And I think they were saying in the research it was 2 hours a week is what you're thinking is the optimum time. Is that
Yeah.
what you were researching, the amount of time as well?
Well, there's still some ongoing discussions around how much you need. There's anything between 15 minutes to 2 hours a week, but the more the better always. But in my opinion, anything is better than nothing. So even if you can't access the most pristine forest and national park, even urban parks, your local parks are still going to give you a benefit. And even if it's just a 15-minute walk, you will still be able to get some of these benefits. They might not last as long, and they might not be as high, so your stress might not decrease as much as if you were to spend the day in a national park, but it's still going to give you some benefits.
Yes, I particularly liked the fact that you called it stress recovery. So it's almost a preventative thing to be able to do that and just reduce your stress so that it doesn't get to those levels of starting to
Mm-hmm.
affect your sleep and then your cognitive ability and
That's
decision
right.
making. And I think they're the things that absolutely impact on a workplace, because one of the aspects here is what's the responsibility of workplaces to promote national parks continuing, because they're free. I mean, we're so lucky to have such great access in the developed world that we can get to them easily.
That's right. This is an incredible free community resource. There's not many of those, right, that are available to everyone. And yet not everybody relies on them. We know that about 30% of Australians don't really go into their national parks or their forests, which is for many reasons. So I wish we could get more people to think of nature as
Yeah.
theirs. The role, I think, of employers here is to perhaps facilitate access to for their employees to get these preventative nature experiences. And like I said, it doesn't have to be a week hiking, on a trail, Kosciuszko National Park. It doesn't have to be this. But these natural spaces, which are created for often an environmental purpose, are also giving us so much as individuals, and companies are reaping the benefits. As you've seen, our research says that regular visits to these national parks, these forest settings, can increase your productivity up to 11%. So that's a big thing,
Yeah. I think even just getting an extra hour of productivity a week would be not even 10%. So and also to be motivated, like you're not putting a lot of energy into not feeling tired or having a coffee. Instead of having a coffee, you'd be better off touching a tree or going to your local park. And I
you can
know
do
that I
both.
have a
Bring your
tendency.
coffee outside.
Yes, coffee is still important. I agree.
But yeah, it's
Yes,
all this.
have outside. That's true. Even if it's freezing cold like it is in Adelaide at the moment, you can still go out there for a short minute and get some air and then come back in.
Right.
That's true.
And just I just want to say, when I say productivity, this is not from a it's not from a capitalist point of view. This is about mental health. And I think we've all experienced going to work sometimes and staring at our computer screen and being quite unproductive. We're there. This is called presenteeism, and that's what we measured. And so just these frequent nature experiences reduce the amount of days where we are so tired or so stressed or so out of it that we can't really do our work. And doing your job is what allows you to maintain your life, pay your rent, put your in your car, feed your kids, which is very important. So mental health is really a clincher here.
Yes, and I think with the mental health too, sleep is another thing too. I know they say that with exercise, but they're not even talking about running through nature's forest or to get your heart rate up. It's actually just getting yourself into a different space within yourself, and that induces the body to relax more easily. And I would think that would improve sleep patterns.
That's right. It's this disconnection. It's this sort of mindfulness. Of course, if the added benefit of exercising is that you can't really be thinking about other things, right? It is like ocean swimming. It's when you're swimming in the ocean, you can't really be thinking about work. You have to think about your survival. And so that's one of the benefits. And it's the same that if you engage more with when you're walking, if you're looking at birds, if you're smelling the flowers, if you're listening to the sounds, this disconnects your mind from the rest. And this disconnection is what allows the recovery. It allows your body to calm down, your stress level, and if you do that often enough, then lower anxiety, lower depression as well.
Oh, wow. So what about listening to podcasts while you're going through nature?
For sure.
Which is becoming now. You see so many people who don't hear the bike that might be on the trail with you, or they don't notice the kookaburra because they're listening to something else. So
that's right.
Really, I think when we're talking about this, we're actually saying don't have anything electronic with you.
That's right. I mean, yes and no. It's whatever's going to engage. It's going to engage your mind. If you're listening to a podcast or like I do an audio book and you're outside, well, that doesn't prevent me from looking around, looking for the birds. And so I don't want to say leave your devices at home, because that would be hypocritical. That's not what I do. I tend, the coffee, the device, and nature, I can have it all. The key is to pay attention to your surrounding, and I will admit that it's harder sometimes to not think about work when I'm listening to something. So a book or a podcast might not be what I need to really disconnect from my more negative thoughts, because I'll somehow be like, oh no, I've not been listening to this thing I'm thinking. So as long as you're able to genuinely pay attention, be mindful of your surrounding, of really connecting, this connection to nature. Nature is such a good thing because there's so much to grab your attention, then you can get the benefit.
Yes, and I think too, it's very easy to go down your own mindset. And the idea is to be aware of where you're at even if you are listening to a book or a fictional or something that's
Yeah,
not work related, then I think that's going to have a much greater overall benefit in there.
that's right.
I think the other thing too, one thing that I just picked up on the research is that level of violence is reduced, and violence, I'm talking about vandalism as well as domestic violence. So you were able to measure that in the survey and the study as well.
So I wasn't able to measure that, but there's some, it's a bit of a piecemeal work at this stage that looks at your mental well-being and how that reduces, your the domestic violence or the what we call antisocial behavior like vandalism. Sorry, that's my cat. You can hear scratching at the door right now. Sorry.
Do you want to let her in?
I might let him in. Okay. Really? Really?
Oh, aren't you beautiful?
Yeah.
Oh, this is certainly going to help with well-being too. Look,
That's right.
having
And
him
a
on your
pet.
lap.
So cute. Look at this kitten.
Oh, it's gorgeous. And what's your name?
His name is Canal, which means cinnamon in French, because he looks like a big
Oh,
cinnamony
yes. Oh, look at
cat.
that. Beautiful. Nice,
Oh,
nice little switch altogether from here we were talking about antisocial behavior
that's right.
in
So
walks.
heaps of research in the psychology literature around your well-being and these kind of things, violence and social behavior like vandalism, and things like that. And then we're starting to bring in the nature to well-being aspect. So I haven't done a direct measure of nature to these kind of things, violence, but we know that well-being again is a mediator here. And so therefore people having better mental health, we can directly influence these things. Less domestic violence, less criminal behavior. But let's not claim that nature is the only solution to this problem.
Oh, and I think too, it's looking at lifestyle, looking at your fitness level. If you're in pain
Yeah.
and you're doing the work in nature, it's going to be very, very different to if you
That's
had a
right.
really
And
lovely
we talk
morning.
about productivity, and I talk about work productivity and going to work without recognizing that not everybody has a job. And so that's,
Yeah.
that's also comes into play, I think.
Yes, and I think I'm not sure whether that was in the literature review or just bringing the context in there. They're also thinking about children, and from that 5 to 15 age group, the more time they're likely to be all okay.
He's left, I think.
He's bored with the conversation. That children between 5 and 15, if you start going into nature on a regular basis, they're more likely to do that as an adult, and the importance of learning those early behaviors. I think you were mainly in your study, you were actually looking at adults, and there was
Yeah.
almost 18,000 people that you
Yeah,
surveyed in
yeah. We
Victoria
had
and
a
Queensland.
20,000, yes, sample. It was really a really big sample, which is
Yeah.
really interesting because you can really see some patterns. And it's funny you mentioned children, because I am convinced that your childhood and your experience will define how much benefit you get from different experiences. And we don't really, who you are, your personality, we don't really know this. And I would love to study more about it, because I'd always take myself as an example, because why not? I grew up in France, the further away from any coastline, so going to the ocean wasn't really a thing. So I'm not a big ocean person, and I didn't really know about what a national park is until I was an adult. So it's not one of those stories where you grew up in nature and you end up here, not at all. So I might get a very different relationship with nature than somebody who grew up on the Gold Coast between the ocean and the hinterland. That doesn't mean we're not getting benefits, but we don't quite understand this interaction between experience, personality, and what you might do. That said, for sure, if you do things when you're children or a child, you're more likely to do it as an adult. And we also know, which I find really interesting, is that children are a way to influence their parents. So when it comes to environmentally friendly behavior, whether it's recycling, things like that, if you teach the children, they then can teach their parents and influence the behavior of somebody who's already an adult, which is really cool.
Yes, and I think getting children away from their devices is a bit of a trick. So I know that with my granddaughters, they have to create a treasure hunt for each
Mm-hmm.
other. So they've got to go on a path and then look for things and then hide them. And so that they're becoming mindful when they're in the bush and they're just not doing it along a track that seems to go forever and go nowhere. There's a purpose for it. And I think just
Yeah.
getting these sorts of exercises happening. The interesting thing too with your study is that it didn't make any difference whether it was a tropical rainforest that people were walking in or in Victoria in a temperate rainforest. It made no difference to your study results.
Yeah, so we didn't have really fine scale data. So this is a very broad observation, but there wasn't much difference in these kind of things. I think it'll be quite interesting to understand what's available in those national parks for people. And I actually have a student who I was talking to just now, and she's going to map some of the landscape features available in Australia in national parks, and things that will connect to people when they go out, like a soundscape and the sights and the vegetation. And we really want to know what people might encounter when they go into a national park and try to map that, and then eventually bring it back to, does that make a difference? Do you get more from this? For example, water is a big thing. People love water.
Yes,
So I
yes.
expect that we'll find that if there is
Yeah.
water involved, you might get a greater benefit, for example.
I think when I'm planning bush walks with my girls, I really do need to have them in gumboots because they'll find a puddle. But more importantly, they love the creek of putting rocks in to
Yeah,
cross a creek.
great.
And so we're doing problem solving as well at the same time. So
Everybody loves
I think,
water. Yeah, not
yeah,
just
I
children.
think that. And also, you mentioned before looking at the birds. I think if you've got movement and animals that are happening, so
The sounds.
adults,
Yeah.
it sounds just
Mm.
generally, and I think that sound bath becomes much broader than just the air or the wind or leaf
Yes,
movements. It's
because often you
actually
can't see the bird. It's almost like I'm walking around, I'm like I can hear the bird, but I cannot see the bird. And it's still really, it's like a little mystery. I love that. I'm like, ooh, what was that? Is that a whip bird? Where is it?
the other day I was walking and a kookaburra flew onto a branch at my height.
I love
And so
that.
I could actually see it the other day. And I went, oh, wow. And I was able to just stop what I was doing, like walking, and just really just look
Hmm.
at the bird and just be grateful. And I felt like it was looking at me, sort of thinking, what are you going to do today? What's on here? I had a little chat with them, but that's my imagination going quite wild. What did you personally gain from doing this research? I know you were with a team of people and within Griffith University, I think it
Yeah,
was, wasn't
yeah,
it?
mostly Griffith. It was a collaboration between Ralph Buckley, who's in with me, environment and science, and Paula Brough, who's a psychologist, and Chris Fleming, who's an economist, and other people. This is the main team of some of this research. So it was really interdisciplinary. So what I gained, and it really opened my thoughts around the value of conservation and nature for people, because I actually came from more a school of thought, so it's all about nature. I'm a trained conservation scientist coming from ecology, and really caring about what the biodiversity is doing, and just for its sake. And then through this research, it's really grown my care and understanding for how people are interacting with nature, and in particular the inequity in this access, and how some people, like I said, 30% of Australians, for example, don't really think of nature as theirs. Whereas most people do live next to even just a local park. It's Most places are like that. And most Australians will be living within maybe 30 or 50k to a national park, which is a lot if you don't have a car, admittedly, but quite close in general. And so the fact that there's still a huge slice of the population that doesn't think of nature as an option for recreation, let alone mental well-being, is it's a problem, and I would like to really sort that out.
Yes, I know in South Australia we're trying to increase the number of trees that are being planted. So councils have got a target of wanting to increase it by another 100% of the trees. So there's always a tree that you can touch or to hold. And even with my pot plants in here, I tend and water them each day or just touch them. And that's just enough to, I feel like you're then looking at something that's alive and moving and adapting.
And of course, the trees provide so much shade and heat management. It's very obvious that a street with and without trees sometimes can have a 10-degree difference in summer on the pavement. Just the trees. So it's very important for other reasons also to keep the cities green. Yeah.
And certainly, I think we need more of that scientific research. And really, we want workplaces to be able to support green around. And I think sustainability with the air that we're breathing, the environments that we're creating, which is what we wanted to do in workplaces too. Thank you very much, Ali. Is there anything else that you would really like to say about the research that we haven't covered, just to be finishing off with today?
No, look, I think we had a really lovely chat. And in conclusion, I just want to say that this is not about gatekeeping nature. It's the opposite of that. So if people can't go for 2 hours every week, that's okay. Even a little bit in your local park is great. If you can't exercise, if it's just a really slow walk, that's totally fine. Even though you'll get more benefits if you go more often, do more intense exercise, and you do for longer, but you still get a lot from a little bit. And so I would like just to get that message across, that nature is for everyone, to your ability, to your availability, to your desire. Yeah.